Kratos killed every god on Mount Olympus, tore through titans, crawled out of the underworld 3 separate times because death couldn't hold him. And then he moved to Scandinavia.
What was that?
Quiet.
And nearly lost a fistfight with a stranger who showed up at his front door. And everybody wants to know who's stronger, young Kratos or old Kratos? The guy who murdered a pantheon, or the guy who struggles to talk to his own son? The answer isn't what you'd expect, and it changes what strength actually means. Because the version of Kratos that everyone calls weaker, the old quiet, tired version, he's carrying something the young one never had. And that thing is the reason he wins. But to see it, you have to watch what each version was really fighting for. Let's rewind this. Young Kratos is a Spartan general, son of Zeus, though he doesn't know it yet. He's losing a war against the barbarians badly, and rather than accept defeat, he calls out to Ares, the god of war, and pledges his life in exchange for victory.
Ares! Destroy my enemies, and my life is yours!
Ares answers, gives him the Blades of Chaos, chains them to his forearms, burns the links into his skin. The deal works, the barbarians are slaughtered, and Kratos belongs to a god now. Ares wants a perfect weapon, no attachments, no softness. So he engineers a situation where Kratos, blinded by bloodlust during a raid on a village,
This entire village stands as an affront to Lord Ares! Burn this village! Burn it to the ground!
kills his own wife, Lysandra, and his daughter Calliope with his own hands. A village oracle curses him, bonds the ashes of his dead family to his skin permanently. His flesh turns white.
Ashes of your wife and child will remain fastened to your skin, never to be removed.
From that point forward, every person who looks at Kratos sees a ghost, the ghost of Sparta. And that ghost spends the next decade doing the gods' dirty work, hunting down threats across Greece, hoping they'll take the nightmares away. They never do. That's who young Kratos is, a weapon who doesn't know he's being used. And the power that comes from that is staggering. He kills Ares using the power of Pandora's box, growing to the size of a god to do it. Takes the throne as the new god of war. When the Olympians betray him, he goes through them. Poseidon gets ripped apart, and the oceans flood Greece. Hades gets his soul torn out with his own weapons. Helios gets his head pulled off bare-handed. Kronos, a titan so large that entire structures sit on his body, tries to crush Kratos between his fingers. And Kratos fights his way out, guts him from the inside. He kills the Sisters of Fate and rewrites destiny itself. He escapes the underworld 3 times on sheer refusal to stay dead. And then there's Zeus. Watch this fight. It goes past victory, past necessity. Kratos beats the king of the gods, his own father, and keeps going. Greece is crumbling around him. The sky is black because Helios is dead. The oceans are swallowing the coastline because Poseidon is dead. The dead are walking because Hades is gone. And Kratos is still swinging. Fist after fist. The screen goes red. You can't even see what's happening anymore because the game is showing you what Kratos sees, which is nothing except the next hit. He doesn't stop until the player stops pressing the button. That's the game telling you something. Young Kratos doesn't have an off switch. His rage has no floor. And when it's over, when Zeus finally stops moving, Kratos stands in the ruins of an entire civilization that he personally dismantled. And he has nothing. No family, no enemies left, no reason to exist. He tries to kill himself, drives the blade of Olympus through his own stomach, and falls off a cliff. The fuel ran out. There was nothing underneath the anger. If you're measuring strength by damage output, young Kratos is one of the most destructive forces in any fictional universe. And it's not even close. So, why does the game's own director say he loses? In 2019, a fan asked Cory Barlog, the creative director of God of War 2018, a direct question. If old Kratos and young Kratos fought, Who wins? Barlog's answer was 2 words: Old Kratos, without question. Most people pushed back on that, because look at what Old Kratos is doing when we meet him in the Norse saga. He's chopping down trees, carrying his dead wife's ashes up a mountain with his kid. The first real fight he has is with a stranger called Baldur, Odin's son. And while Kratos wins, he's winded afterward, visibly tired. For the first time in the franchise, you see Kratos breathe heavy after a fight. His hands shake. He's over 200 years old, hasn't fought anything on that level in over a century. Rusty, slower, and deliberately holding back. Hiding what he is from Atreus because he's terrified his son will see the monster underneath. And the moment that tells you the most about Old Kratos isn't a fight. It's when Atreus gets sick, deathly sick. The only cure is in Helheim, a realm so cold that the Leviathan axe is useless there. Kratos walks to the back of his house, digs beneath the floorboards, and pulls out the blades of chaos. The weapons he buried because they represent everything he ran from. The chains, the ash, the family he killed with those exact blades. Watch his face when he wraps them around his arms. He's not excited to have them back. There's grief in his hands, but his son is dying.
You will always be a monster.
I know. But I am your monster no longer.
So he picks up the thing he hates most about himself because it's the only thing that can save what he loves most. That's who Old Kratos is, and that's why you can't measure him with the same way you measure the version who burned down Olympus. But here's what the game buries underneath all that restraint. And this is the part the power scaling debates always miss. During that first Baldur fight, Kratos snaps his neck. Just grabs him and breaks it. Baldur only survives because Freya's invulnerability spell won't let him die. That's a Kratos who hasn't fought a god in 100 years, hasn't touched the blades of chaos, hasn't gone anywhere near his full capacity, and his opening move is to end it instantly with raw force. Later, Magni and Modi show up, Thor's sons, demigods who as children were strong enough to lift a frozen giant corpse off their father, even when Thor couldn't move it. Kratos handles Magni while protecting Atreus at the same time, kills him outright. Then Ragnarok. Kratos gets the Draupnir spear forged specifically to deal with Heimdall, the god who can read your intentions before you act on them. No attack should ever land on Heimdall. He's never been hit in his entire life. Kratos figures out that the spear, which replicates and detonates on command, overloads Heimdall's ability to predict. He lands the first punch Heimdall has ever felt, and watch Heimdall's face when it connects.
You actually hit me!
That's not pain, that's the realization that his entire identity just shattered. Kratos offered to let him walk away. Heimdall couldn't accept that, so Kratos strangles him.
Oh, no. You are going to spare me out of pity!
Let it go, you may live.
Is this about the little runt? Oh, now I am definitely going to gut him.
And then there's Thor, the physically strongest Norse god. The one who hit the world serpent so hard their fight splintered Yggdrasil and sent the serpent backward through time. Kratos fights him twice. In the final encounter they start even, but each clash pushes Thor further back. Kratos is getting stronger mid-fight, adapting, escalating. The game's developers confirmed this. His power is reawakening with every battle. The more he fights, the more he returns to what he was. And what he was could end pantheons. So here's the real question underneath the power scaling debate. If Old Kratos can do all of that while holding back, while keeping himself on a leash for his son's sake, then what happens if the leash comes off? That's what Barlog is pointing out. Young Kratos had no restraint. That sounds like an advantage until you see what it actually costs. Every fight was all or nothing. Every battle burned everything around him. He killed Poseidon and the oceans consumed Greece. He killed Helios and the sun went dark. He killed Hades and the dead rose from the underworld. Winning a fight meant destroying the thing he was standing on. He won every battle and lost the entire world. Old Kratos runs on something else entirely. When Baldur shows up at his door and the fight breaks out, there's a moment where Kratos looks back at his house. Watch that glance.
You would not listen.
It lasts half a second. Atreus is inside, and that one look tells you everything about why this version of Kratos fights differently.
Who is that?
I do not know.
What's he talking about?
I do not know. Get in.
He's not fighting because someone wronged him. He's not fighting to prove anything. He's fighting because something behind him needs to still be there when the fight is over. That changes how you fight. You stop swinging at things that don't need to be hit. You stop burning yourself down to win. You find ways to end a threat without becoming one. And when you finally do let go, when the leash does snap, like it did with Heimdall, the force behind it is terrifying because it's controlled until it isn't. And then there's 200 years of buried power behind the first punch.
You actually hit me!
The novelization of God of War 2018 describes Baldur as the strongest opponent Kratos has ever faced in terms of raw physical power. Stronger than any Greek god he'd fought. And Kratos, rusty and suppressed, still beat him every single time. A version of Kratos running at a fraction of his capacity was enough to handle a god whose strength rivaled anything in the entire franchise. The power never left, he just stopped letting it drive. You've had a version of yourself that ran on anger. Maybe you're running on it now. The years where everything felt urgent and personal. Every setback was a war. You were effective. People moved out of your way because they could feel the heat before you entered the room. And it worked until it didn't. Until you realized you'd been winning fights you never needed to have. Until the room was empty and the fire was still going on. And there was nothing left to burn except you. And maybe the people around you during those years would tell you that was your strongest version. The version that walked in loud and left louder. They'd point to it the way someone points to young Kratos tearing Helios' head off and says, "See, that's power." Then maybe you got to the other side, where you were quieter. Where someone pushed you and you didn't push back. And they walked away thinking they were stronger. They didn't understand that the restraint was the strength. That person choosing not to react had more power compressed into that pause than you ever had in your loudest moment. They just couldn't see it because it didn't look the way they expected power to look. I know this one. There was a stretch where everything I did came from a place that looked like drive but was really just anger dressed up in a work ethic. I burned through projects, through people, through versions of myself that I thought weren't good enough. And I was productive, I was sharp, but I was also hollowing out. The thing about running on rage is that it feels like fuel right up until you notice there's no one in the passenger seat anymore. Everyone either left or got pushed out. And you're still driving, just faster and with less reason. I didn't lose a fight. I just looked up one day and realized I'd won my way into an empty room. The version of me that came after that, quieter, slower, more careful with people, that version felt weaker for a long time. It took years to understand that the pause before reacting was harder than the reaction ever was. And that hard is where the real strength lives. Young Kratos could kill anything. Old Kratos could choose not to. And the one who chose is always more dangerous than the one who can't stop. 200 years of power held in check by a man who already destroyed one world and would rather die than do it again. That's who wins. The question was never who hits harder. It was who decides when to stop. Young Kratos never could, and that's exactly why he loses. But if restraint is what makes old Kratos stronger, what happens when you meet a man who has no time left to find restraint? A man who's dying, and the only thing he hasn't settled is who he was. Arthur Morgan answers that. And what Red Dead Redemption 2 teaches about forgiveness might be the hardest truth a video game has ever put on screen. That one's next.